kindly asked the general manager that has been the drive of all this transformation, we have kindly asked him to come here and present us this wonderful example that they have created, and we are so proud to have such an example here with us today. So, Mehmet Hadzikamiloğlu, General Manager of Simsa Cement, welcome.
So we're trying to change things, but if we are not careful enough, and if we do not succeed to put people in the heart of the parameters, we know that we will not be successful. So for 2 days long, we discussed what are the challenges in front of us, how we can come over them, how we can answer of almost each employee of Çimsa, what is it in for me? Well, a learning organization, as Peter mentioned, it's not just a tool which you can use in business life, but I know it can be used in schools. We have schools that are trying to become a learning school. We have municipalities in Turkey that are trying to become learning municipalities. I heard about cities and even countries nowadays. And I believe by taking small steps, but by making sure that each step is towards the future and carefully taken, we can achieve what Peter mentioned in his speech. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Our next and final speaker is Arie de Hoes.
Also, what a result of that meeting was that business was going to do something about looking at the future. And they were going to do it by specialization. And they agreed amongst each other that they were going to give it to these accountants people, these bookkeepers, because that was nice. These bookkeepers, they knew all the figures, and all they had to do was, instead of, you know, bookkeepers in those days used to write up the figures of yesterday, and then at the end of the year add them up and make a balance sheet and a profit and loss. And what they were asking in scientific management was to say to these bookkeepers, well, if you do that, why don't you at the same time also make the estimate, put the figures together for next year? That you cannot predict the future. For various reasons, some of which you've been told today by Cristoph. You can't predict the future, but even if you could, you wouldn't dare to act on it. Inside your brain, there are both chemical and electrical types of connections. There are millions, they tell me even billions of neurons. They each have at least 2, if not more, different ways of connecting with other neurons and building up patterns. And it goes at a tremendous speed. But in the institutional situation, where you sit there with your management team, the principal link between the individual brains that are around the table is language. There's body language, but the most important one is just words. So that started in Shell, certainly in my mind, questions about, well, what does that mean? And in the United Kingdom, we had at some stage an Austrian professor, Wittgenstein, just after the Second World War in Cambridge University. And Wittgenstein wrote a number of totally unreadable books. You know, the sort of books that every paragraph you have to read 3 times and you still don't know what it means. But there are a few things that come out of Wittgenstein's work that we people who are taking decisions for institutions, commercial, business, whatever, that we better start thinking about. And the price that we are beginning to pay as mankind, in my opinion, for my grandsons, is too high. Our individual lives are completely dominated by all the human institutions that we have created in the last 150 years. Listen, do you realize that the biggest population explosion in the world is the increase in human institutions? 150 years ago, there were hardly any. There were a few armies, there were a few governmental institutions, there were a few commercial companies. And we have seen an enormous explosion of the world's population of institutions to the extent that there is nothing that you can do or buy or move or whatever in your life where you're not immediately in contact with an institution and its effects or products. So we have a real interest as human beings to try to do the research and to start finding out the ways by which we can improve this organizational learning stroke decision taking. And I think that's the promise of SoL. That's why we should come together in SoL. That's why we should create the resources in SoL to actually start working on this. I'm now so full of guilt that I probably have red cheeks. Thank you very much. You're a great audience.
And we also talked about yesterday in Athens that optimism and pessimism, we tend to ask ourselves, are you optimistic or are you pessimistic? Well, I made a quote from Václav Havel when he was sitting in prison, writing to his wife. And he said, optimism is an expectation based on the evidence at hand that there is a reasonable likelihood of a positive outcome. That's what optimism is. But hope, my friend, he writes to his wife, is something completely different. Hope is the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it might turn out. It's something that starts in our hearts and something we are convinced of, and without hope we vanish. And we need to keep the hope, so to say, alive. So these are things we talked about yesterday in Athens, and I just like to share that because it's part of the Greece journey. But really, I came up here to say thanks to Auntie, because she has now taken, with hope and dedication and her vision of a desirable future, to set Greece SoL in motion. And I think it's wonderful. We should give her a big hand for that. So thank you for that, and congratulations, and good luck.